Hello and welcome to coverage of round one here at Grand Prix Montreal Guilds of Ravnica Limited. Marie Bartholdi in the booth, joined by Reed Duke. Both players sitting at 0-0 as it is the first round. Philip Nevins there on the right and Jasar Alarar and Izzet on the left. He is a two-time Canadian national champion, had a Pro Tour top 8 in Chicago. That was a pretty stacked top 8 as well.
Yeah, always exciting to see the old school players out at their local Grand Prix.
Selesnya / Boros for Philip Nevins, so we're doing a bit of a splash here, which when you've got guild gates in the set is not something that is too unusual.
Definitely, yeah, there's actually a special templating for the Guilds of Ravnica packs where there's going to be one guild gate in every pack no matter what, so that means everyone who opens their sealed deck is going to have a handful to work with, and particularly when your best rares might be split over a number of colors. I think we'll see this three-color configuration somewhat often over the course of today's sealed deck rounds.
And that's something I like in sealed too, because it just gives you more options. And we can see this in full effect here. Perfect mana for Philip, coming in with Sky Knight Legionnaire for a couple points of damage. Devkaren Dissident already on the field, which is a nice little 2-drop that can get bigger, versus a Goblin Locksmith on Alarar's side.
Yeah, so you can actually see Philip taking great pains to not trade off these 2-drop creatures. He might be looking ahead for the Devarkin to be able to be pumped up later in the game, so he doesn't want to trade it off with the Goblin Locksmith.
Wishcoin Crab hits the table for Alarar. A 2/5 body, which has actually really impressed me and can stop quite a lot on the ground. Legionnaire comes in for another 2. We'll drop him down to 16. Ooh, and this is a nice one. District Guide for Nevins.
Yeah, perfect for a 3-color deck. He's going to be able to find his colors, smooth his draw, but even past that, it's just a really nice value creature, and you can see that now if Nevins gets to trade off with the Goblin Locksmith using this District Guide, then he got a little more bit of a favorable exchange and gets to keep his 2-drop Devarkin around.
Yeah, and it's really cool, too, because you're able to find your gates with the District Guide, not only your basic lands.
Mm-hmm. So that means finding 2 colors of mana, and there's also a handful of cards in Guilds of Ravnica that benefit you for having more gates in play.
Oh man, have you ever cast a card that lets you draw based on the number of gates you control?
Yeah, I have. Guild Summit, that's a fun one.
Oh, I drafted a deck around it. It was so dumb, but I did eventually draw 6, and I was like, we got there. It was not a good deck, though.
Well, that's an example of, you have the 5 guilds that you can draft around that everyone's seen these decks, but then there's also some secret archetypes that creative players can find.
Secret archetypes. Okay, hopefully we'll get to see some of those this weekend. Jay here attacking with a couple of creatures. No block, says Philip. He'll get in for 4. Nevins down to 14.
Ooh, so Philip really choosing not to trade off creatures here, which is something you might see out of Selesnya, because those creatures can be powerful for convoking later or perhaps having an overrun type effect to pump the whole team. But you mentioned at the start of the day, Maria, you got to be careful against these Izzet decks. If you let your life total drop too low, it opens a lot of doors for the Izzet deck to sort of steal games, and we'll see if LRR's draw is able to produce something like that.
Here's Quasi-Duplicate on the Wishcoin Crab, which is something I haven't seen before, but in this position, that seems like totally fine. It's a 2/5 body, blocks everything on the ground from Philip.
Definitely. Quasi-Duplicate's a really nice card. Unlike many previous clone-type cards, you can't copy your opponent's creatures, but you make up for that in the efficiency of 3-mana card and the ability to jumpstart and get multiple uses out of it. So just copying a Wishcoin Crab, you mentioned it, totally fine outcome. It's going to hold off the creatures of Philip Nevins, but its cards gets even more powerful if you have something like, a rare creature or something with a really cool, unique ability.
5 mana here for Philip. He's going to cast a Hellkite Whelp, 3/3 that pings something when it attacks.
Philip's developing nicely here. He's putting together quite an air force, which is going to frustrate these Wishcoin Crabs that their job really is to block on the ground.
In for another 2 ties up our life totals, 14 apiece for both players here. And I think LRR is struggling a little bit with the lack of a second red mana. I spotted a direct current in his hand earlier.
Yeah, he would love that to take out the Sky Knight Legionnaire and reduce the clock.
Something that I've noticed from Izzet too is my turns kind of take a little bit longer than in other guilds. Unexplained Disappearance will send the Hellkite back to Philip's hand, and we're going to do a Surveil here. But that's because it really plays to the flavor of Izzet, I think, which I think is a major win for R&D with the way that you can construct your turns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything you do with Izzet is about having fun and doing crazy stuff that sometimes your opponent has never seen before.
All right, let's send them all in here. And now Philip, a little bit more interested in blocking, is going to trade off the District Guide with the Goblin Locksmith. But the Crabs are going to get in for another 4. Nevin's down to 10. Two mana still left up on LRR's side of the table.
So we'll see if Nevins just winds up recasting his Hellkite this turn or if he comes up with something different.
Six mana available for Nevins. Kind of struggling with the decision of whether or not to recast that Hellkite, as he said. And then don't forget that we do have the pump ability on the Dissident that's on the table as well, available, but it's quite expensive.
So if you're just tuning in, that little scrap of paper on LRR's side, that's a quasi-duplicate created token of a copy of Wishcoin Crab. We'll have tokens for you later on in the day, but there actually is no Wishcoin Crab token. That's not something that you see
No.
every round, but that's also tapped right now. So if Nevins would like, he can get in with his Devarkin on the ground.
All right, so we're going to replay the Hellkite Whelp here. And Sky Knight Legionnaire, the air assault continues, hits the red zone. We'll drop the opponent down to 12. And as you mentioned, that quasi-duplicate is still in the graveyard, available for a jumpstart if you want.
Geez, look at that. LRR found his second red mana, but enters the battlefield tapped. This is something you'll see a lot in Guilds of Ravnica. You're waiting to draw your colors, but sadly a lot of your lands are going to be Guild Gates, particularly when you're splashing.
Are you still going to put Guild Gates in your 2-color deck?
Yeah, at least a couple. And it depends on the speed of my deck. You want them a little bit less in aggro Boros when you're trying to curve out in the early turns, but you can afford them a little bit more in a slower Golgari or Dimir deck.
All right, so just a pass back here from LOR. Philip is from Vermont. This is his 4th Grand Prix. He's never made day 2. Going to make a run at it here at this tournament. As you mentioned, LR, old school player, only goes about to 1 GP a year or so when it's near where he lives. Plays Magic Online when my life lets me get away, he says.
Good.
All right, an attack for 5 here in the air from Nevins. We'll drop LRR down to 7. And we left 4 mana up, so we know he's got something going on, potentially. Fresh-faced recruit for Nevins here. He's got first strike on his turn.
Not a tremendous play on this board in the face of those 2 Wishcoin Crabs. They're doing a good job holding the ground. But really what this game is going to come down to is if LRR can find an answer to these flyers. We did see his direct current, which could maybe take care of the Sky Knight Legionnaire, but the Hellkite Whelp is a different story.
How about Watcher in the Mist?
That's a good blocker. Now, Hellkite Whelp can threaten to trade with it if Nevins attacks and uses the triggered ability to deal 1 damage to the Watcher in the Mist. But even I think LRR would be happy with that exchange of getting rid of one of the most potent threats and surveilling to smooth out his draw and keep the wheels turning. But all of this is dependent on Philip Nevins not having a removal spell or a combat trick to win the fight.
Right.
So we'll see what he can come up with on his turn.
I love Watcher in the Mist.
Yeah, this is a great card. Reminiscent, of course, of the Cloud Reader Sphinx from Dominaria draft.
Oh, yes.
But Surveil even a little bit stronger than Scry because of that ability to fill your graveyard.
Fresh-faced recruit card I actually quite like in Boros. The first strike, excellent when you're mentoring.
Yeah, that guy's annoying to block. if you go first and play a fresh-faced recruit, there's not that many plays I can make on turn 2 where I'm gonna have a profitable exchange in combat against you.
And here you can see Nevins kind of pushing the issue. The Hellkite Whelp does trigger the ping on the Watcher in the Mist and says, well, which one are you going to block? Because my Skylight Legionnaire is coming in too. And LR's tapped out.
So
and we've got Assure.
Yeah, that's going to be +1/+1 and indestructible. So a really nice play. Good way to force his creature through the opposing blocker.
That, of course, one half of Assure and Assemble. A really powerful rare for Celestia. And you just get to keep the counter, too.
And that's pretty fascinating. And one of the great things about these split cards is, you can see that Philip Nevins has the mana. He could have used the more powerful Assemble side to make 3/2/2 Night tokens, but in the face of 2 Wishcoin Crabs, he's going to use his judgment that putting his resources behind his flying creatures is the better way to force the action in this game, because even 3 more creatures on the ground still wouldn't put him in a great position to attack.
Well said. City Watch Sphinx here for LRR. Another pretty good flyer. When it dies, you also get to Surveil too.
Yeah, so similar to the Watcher in the Mist, except in this case you get the Surveil on the back end instead of right up front.
10th District Guard for Nevins here will buff the toughness on the Sky Knight Legionnaire by 1. And Rampaging Monument is the follow-up play. Comes in with 3 +1/+1 counters, and if he plays another multicolored spell, it gets another one.
Wow, so this is a big moment. The turn where the aggressive player has to stop attacking can sometimes signal a turning point. Not that LRR is winning by any means, but this is he's going to breathe a sigh of relief here as he stabilizes the board at 5 life. His opponent's out of cards, and now he's got to think, well, at least I'm going to have time to play the spells in my hand instead of just dying. He would have been done there if Philip Nevins had a removal spell for the City Watch Sphinx.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of removal in Alar's hand too, but is it enough? He's certainly behind on the creature side of things as the board sits currently.
You know, Maria, I wouldn't have minded an attack from the Hellkite Whelp on Philip's turn because the City Watch Sphinx, he's going to have to fight through it if he wants to keep cracking in with the Boros Legionnaire, the Sky Knight Legionnaire. And equally important is LRR has the quasi-duplicate, so you really want to prevent your opponent from untapping with their most powerful creatures, because now he's going to have 2 City Watch Sphinxes to fight through.
All right, so we're going to discard Leapfrog to the Jumpstart ability of quasi-duplicate here. And now we've seen the power of this rare, too. We've got 2 2/5s on the ground, and now 2 5/4s in the air. Sometimes you've just got to push through, even if it means some of your creatures are going to die in the battle.
Yeah, I mean, trading with the City Watch Sphinx is not great, particularly because you do get the 2 points of Surveil when it dies. But this is still a close, fascinating game. You can see that Philip has assembled 5 creatures against the opposing 4, and the opponent only at 5 life. So this could mean a single removal spell is still getting real close to just winning, but he's going to need to have a good draw step or else he's forced to pass the turn with no play.
And this is something too, I mean, I know we're in the Izaguild, but we've got a couple of more Dimir flavored cards here in the City Watch Sphinx. what we can see a guild like Is It do, which is Demir, which is fall behind pretty significantly, but then be able to claw its way back slowly.
Digging for those answer cards, focusing a lot on removal spells and neutralizing the opponent's threats.
Yeah, and Philip here just has to pass the turn back. Couple of split cards here in Alarar's hand. I can't quite tell which ones they are, but they're usually pretty powerful in the Is It guild. Something like Expansion Explosion, which is extremely powerful rare, and Invert and Invent, which allows you to go find your great instants and sorceries.
It was funny, Maria, that first day that my teammates and I were playing with the Guilds of Ravnica cards. You do a lot of looking up from the table and seeing your opponent holding a card sideways to read the text. It's like, oh, I wonder what Owen's holding in his hand.
I remember I was actually in the room watching you guys prepare for that tournament, and I saw you draw a split card, and you did not show anything. You were complete poker face, and I was like, oh man, I would have tilted my head at least a little bit.
That's one of the most important skills to practice is not adjusting your sitting position to read a split card.
Yeah, very important, very important. A lot of people forget about that aspect of Magic. Ooh, Rock Charger here.
Rock Charger. This is a card I like quite a lot. Also reminiscent of a card from Dominaria, the Pegasus Courser.
Yes.
But I think it's even more powerful in this format because of, first of all, Mentor, and second of all, the way a guild like Selesnya lends itself to ground stalls. And you can see that if this Rock Charger survives, if LRR doesn't have an answer for it, then it can represent a lot of flying damage that he's got to worry about.
Okay, so here is Invert and Invent from LRR.
So quite a powerful effect in sealed deck. He's going to get to search his library for his best instant and his best sorcery, restock his hand. And this is as exciting for us as it is for you at home. We don't know what he's got. He might not even know what he's got. It's the very first game of the day.
Fingers crossed, Hypothesizzle. Okay, let's see. We've got Lava Coil.
And Sonic Assault, which that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
That might signal that LRR is looking for openings where he can actually kill Philip Nevins. He's on the back foot right now, stabilizing at 5 life, but at any moment we could see Is It do what Is It does.
Exactly.
And win the game out of nowhere. 4 damage, tap 2 blockers.
And we have that direct current in the graveyard still.
Yep, that's 2 more points of damage. So, just at face value, LRR could spend this turn pointing direct current at Nevins or at a creature. He could use Lava Coil, and then if there's ever a moment where he sees an opening or if Nevins maybe attacks with a few too many creatures, he can use Sonic Assault for 4 damage, tap 2 blockers, and then get in with his City Watch Sphinxes. But there's only 2 flying creatures on Nevin's side and 2 5-power flyers on LRR's side, so if he decides to go for it here, he could just have lethal.
Lava Coil here.
This is a smart way to do things, using a hard removal spell first, just in case something goes wrong. He doesn't have to worry about dying on the backswing.
There we go. We're tapping down the rock, and there is the Game 1 handshake going to LR there, managing to take down after stabilizing at 5 life Philip Nevins here in round number 1 of Grand Prix Montreal. Pretty cool stuff there to see him kind of be able to stabilize at such a low life total and, like Is It does, able to get the job done from sometimes seemingly nowhere.
Yeah, if that first game is a preview of what we're going to get this weekend, then I'm really looking forward to this. That was really nice back and forth. We saw a player having to claw back and then use powerful rares and card selection cards to actually navigate towards a route to victory. That was great.
Really cool Magic already so far in the tournament. And Is It a deck and sealed that is not always the easiest to put together. As you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, it's very highly synergy based.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what this indicates to me is that LRR probably has, well, we already saw at least 1 rare in Quasi-Duplicate, but potentially some powerful gold cards that led him to building the Is It color combination in particular.
I think that was 2 copies, by the way, of Invert and Invent in his hand.
That's cool because they can actually chain together. Imagine a board stalled
Yeah.
situation where you use one invent to search for the other one and a sorcery card.
So I've got to ask you this question. Do you like Hypothesizal?
Ooh, I do like Hypothesizal.
Okay, good. I feel vindicated. I've just heard a couple of people kind of a little bit down on the card, and I just was like, wait a second, what? You draw 2 and deal 4? How is that possible? Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, you kill your opponent's best card, which that's already enough for me. I mean, Command the Storm is one of the best
Yeah.
red commons, and that's a similar effect to Hypothesizal, except you don't get to draw 2 cards. But the one thing about Hypothesizal that's worth noting is that if you're using the kill a creature ability, you don't actually get ahead on cards in hand, right? Because you spend
Sure.
1, you draw 2, and you discard 1. So what's really nice is that it's a removal spell, and you get a little bit of card selection. You dig a little deeper, and having the flexibility of, okay, if I have a spell that I really need, maybe I choose not to kill my opponent's creature. So there's a lot going on with Hypothesizal. It's not a backbreaker, but there's a lot of nice things that combine to just make it a good card that Izzet's very happy to play with, particularly when you compare it with Goblin Electromancer for a discount.
Oh, yes. Hey, have you cast a Lava Coil for a single red?
Not yet. I haven't had the pleasure.
It's so good.
Lava Coil is a great card. I think that's one that's going to show up in both limited and constructed, and just be, highly efficient removal spell anytime it's cast.
I was watching Kenji, Numat the Nummy, stream a little bit the other day on Arena, and he was playing Goblins in Standard
Very
to
nice.
a 7-1 victory. It was pretty cool.
Got some new toys from M19. We got the Legion War Boss
Oh, yeah.
from Guilds of Ravnica.
What's the sweetest deck that you've made in Guild so far?
Well, it'd have to be going back to something you mentioned earlier, the Guild Summit.
Oh,
That's a 3-mana blue
yay.
enchantment that lets you draw extra cards based on the number of guild gates you have. So I had a deck with 11 guild gates and 2 guild summits. That was Sultai.
That's awesome. What's better than 1 Guild Summit? Well, 2, obviously, when you have 11 gates. Come on.
Yeah, but and it's particularly great because once you get your second guild summit, you could just be like, all right, I'm guilt-free, taking every land that I see for the rest of the draft.
And there's that Gargoyle, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that thing could be remarkably large in a deck like that. Come down as 7/7 or 8/8 flying.
So both players here heading to their sideboards and shuffling up yet again here for game number 2. Ilarar up a game currently here in round number 1 of Grand Prix Montreal. Limited, we're playing sealed today. Drawing opening hands here for game number 2. These are always my favorite tournaments to cast as well, Reed, just because it's the first time we're seeing these cards played in draft, especially here, and in individual sealed at the top level of play.
Yeah, one of the things that's just great about the game of Magic is the variety of ways that it can be played, and the fact that everything's changing and you're always getting new cards to work with and new perspectives on the cards when you face new opponents. So the first week of a new set is just about as exciting as it gets. And I'm quite looking forward to seeing what the players here at Grand Prix Montreal make out of Guilds of Ravnica.
All right, we had a guild gate on turn 1 for Nevins, which is always where you want to be. 10th District Guard here coming down on turn 2 is just going to be a bear. 2/2 for 2. Goblin Locksmith. First play for Alarar, which was first play last game as well, which is basically just a 2/1. No defenders that we've seen yet from Nevins. Makes them unable to block when it attacks.
But still, we saw LRR's deck be somewhat powerful in the mid and late game, so he's happy with just exchanging creatures at this early stage if that's what he needs to do.
I love the art on the Locksmith. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Philip here attacking in with the 10th District Guard. We're going to see a block from the Goblin. See if we're getting a trade or not here. It looks like not. Take Heart will give +2/+2 to the Guard.
Yeah, so this is an exchange that Philip is winning. He's winning combat here, but LRR is not too disappointed. he's still just trading his cheap creature for 1 card and protecting his life total. So not a disaster for either player there, just sort of a neutral exchange.
Leapfrog from LRR. How do you like this card in Is It?
Well, it's good. And the cool thing about Is It, and the reason it's one of the guilds that I'm most eager to watch this weekend, is that it seems you can diverge the way you build your Is It deck. You can either build a control deck where you're focusing on card drawing, getting to those late game powerful spells, or you can build a beatdown deck where you have cards like Leapfrog alongside the Sonic Assaults, the red burn spells, stuff like Maximize Velocity to give haste, and you can actually unload a lot of evasive damage very quickly.
And we see no attack here from Philip on the last turn. Kind of hoping to hold back the Leapfrog at the very least.
Yeah, and he succeeds in that. It's good that he didn't trade 2 damage for 3, but you can see that he's now lost his ability to trade off the 10th District Guard with the Leapfrog because he can no longer attack into the Wishcoin Crab, and any time that LRR has an instant or sorcery on his own turn, the Leapfrog's going to get in the air. So the 10th District Guard somewhat invalidated, immobilized on this board state.
Rampaging Monument here for Nevins. Hoping to put another counter on it next turn. We'll see if that happens if he plays a multicolored spell. But yeah, as you mentioned, that crab doing a lot of work at last game and this game, it looks like already.
Rampaging Monument's a really nice sealed deck card, particularly in a 3-color deck like Nevin's, but it's going to be met by Lava Coil. Nice to get that one out of the way while you can before it becomes a 5/5.
And now the Leapfrog can leap up into the air. Wishcoin Crab can attack freely as well.
So here's LRR flipping the script on Nevins. He's the one attacking now.
10th District Guard gets in here, taking advantage of the shields down from LRR, but a little bit behind on the race so far and no play here.
Yeah, he's missing his red mana, which I do think that red is his splash color, so hopefully he doesn't have too many spells stranded in his hand, but you know that he's waiting for something here.
Yeah, and we're just going to swing in again for another 5 here from LRR, taking Nevins down to 11.
And here an interesting dynamic with the Leapfrog. It's like Nevins doesn't want to leave back a blocker because the Leapfrog might have flying anyway, but then if you attack, LRR doesn't even have to spend the instant or sorcery and can get in 3 damage.
Wall of Mist, another blocker here for LRR.
That's Collar the Culprit, can destroy a creature with toughness 4 or greater. And I think Nevins was maybe waiting for a better target to see if a Watcher in the Master City Watch Sphinx was going to come down, but he wants to make sure he spends his mana, and he doesn't have too many life points to play with, so he's got to take his spots when he can get them.
How do you like Collar the Culprit in Sealed?
This is a card that I think goes up in value for Sealed deck relative to Booster Draft because you know that the games are going to go a little bit longer. Everyone's going to be playing with any kind of bomb rare creatures that they have access to. So Collar Culprit, a card that's more likely to find a target in a game of Sealed deck, and in particular a good target that you really need to answer.
Nevins here just has to pass the turn back once again. The District Guard still guarding, on guard duty. Leapfrog number 2 from LRR. So they are threatening quite a lot of damage if we see an instant or sorcery from him.
Yep, he's setting up nicely. Looks like Nevins is still stuck, but there's his mountain. That's good.
I'm actually kind of found myself wondering if those Leapfrogs were a sideboard decision.
Oh, good question.
Although Although it did seem that he had plenty of instants and sorceries in game number 1. Sky Knight Legionnaire here from Nevins.
Might actually be on guard duty. Nope, he's going to attack.
LR will take it down to 16. Unexplained disappearance, end of turn. For the 10th District Guard. Doesn't really matter if we're just thinking about those leapfrogs not having flying on his turn, as there's no blockers left for Nevins.
Ooh, well done.
Crushing Canopy. Nice.
Yeah, so the leapfrogs gained flying when Unexplained Disappearance got cast, and Philip took that opportunity to fire off Crushing Canopy and kill one of them. That's one that may very well have come off the sideboard, and a really nice one against LRR's deck after we saw him win the game the first time around with flying creatures.
Direct Current here taking down the Sky Knight Legionnaire. Leapfrog getting in for 3. And remember the jump start on Direct Current. Something you've got to be aware of is jump start at any point of the game, really.
Make a habit of keeping tabs on your opponent's graveyards, both for jump start cards and undergrowth.
Legion Guild Mage for Philip Nevins has the ability to tap creature down or just start 3ing you. So I've noticed this. So we've got the Legion Guild Mage out there and the Sky Knight Legionnaire both on the red splash. Normally we think of splashing in Sealed as something that you want to reserve for really powerful cards, and while the Guild Mage might fit that bill, do you think because of the addition of Guild Gates that we're going to see more aggressive splashes like these?
We're going to see it, and I think different players will have different valuations of the necessity of splash and how deep to go into the splash and how many sources you need, everything like that. But it does come at a cost. Like, for example, we saw Nevins in game 1 with the turn 3 Sky Knight Legionnaire, and it wrought havoc on his opponent. It got him all the way down to 5. But this time, waiting to draw the mountain, playing it on turn 8 or 9, it's a lot less effective. And the Legion Guild Mage might wind up being powerful on this board, but could also be a little too late.
Rock Charger from Nevins. If nothing else, can block a leapfrog.
I have to expect LRR is going to have something at the end of the turn here, as he decided not to jumpstart his Direct Current on the Guild Mage.
Believe I see Invert and Vent in his hand yet.
So that's what he's taking his time thinking about is what can I actually find with Invent here.
It is an instant. Just had to double check. All right, so he's going to search the library for an instant and sorcery card. We already saw the Lava Coil get used. That's something he searched up last game.
Yep, Lava Coil and Direct Current both already used, but the quasi-duplicate.
Sonic Assault as well.
And you can see, Maria, that LRR already has access to 6 points of burn between 2 casts of Sonic Assault, 1 cast of Direct Current. The opponent only at 8 life, so it's getting dicey.
Plus being able to send the leapfrog into the air with both of those. You know, if we want to kill off the flyer somehow too.
Right, so for example, LRR could declare his attack, and if Nevins lets the leapfrog attack, then Sonic Assault could tap Rock Charger. So kind of putting Nevins in an awkward spot where maybe he has to tap the creature before he knows whether or not it's going to have flying, just because the threat of that Sonic Assault is quite a big deal. Wojak
Bodyguard here for LRR, which was his draw this turn. 3/3 Mentor can attack or block alone. Normally we think of this as a Boros card, as it does have the Boros Legion symbol on it. But how do you like it in Is It?
It can certainly be quite good in Is It. I mean, paired with something like the Goblin Locksmith or even that Wishcoin Crab, what's better than a 2/5, a 3/6? But it's not great alongside Leapfrog because it can't mentor onto Leapfrog. But, you know, even pairing it with a combat trick, a Sure Strike, lets it do some even cooler things.
All right, Quasi-Duplicate here, I think was targeting the Bodyguard? Yep, I think he just wrote Wojek on that piece of paper. And Wojek's at coming too. Pretty good.
Yep. One can't attack alone, but two can always attack together.
And we've already got flying on the Leapfrog thanks to the Quasi-Duplicate. Philip Nevin's at 8 life, so we're getting a little bit precarious here. We're going to use the tap ability here of the Legion Guildmage. Oh, actually, Crushing Canopy number 2. All right. 2 Leapfrogs fall to 2 different Crushing Canopies.
And wow, really big deal that LRR targeted the Bodyguard, because if he had pointed the Quasi-Duplicate at the Leapfrog, the triggered ability would have resolved first, and Nevins could have fizzled it by killing the creature in response. But since he did target a ground creature, Nevins unable to do that.
I don't know if I would have done that. I feel like I would have just been completely blown out there. All right, we're going to replay that 10th District Guard, and the Rock Charger is going to chip in, knocking LR down to 15. And 10th District Guard number 2.
And actually, funny enough, I'm reading Leapfrog here. It's not a triggered ability at all. It's just a static effect. It automatically has flying if you've cast an instant or sorcery this turn.
Oh, okay.
So there's no worry about missing your trigger or asking if your opponent whether or not they want to give it flying. It's just automatically happens.
Nice. And here we are going to see the tap from the Guildmage, and better here than even in most situations, as it locks down both bodyguards, essentially.
Boy, really nice job by Philip Nevins here. It looked like he was done for a turn ago, but being able to take out the Leapfrog and now use the Legion Guildmage to strand one of the Wojak bodyguards unable to attack. Remember, of course, that Wall of Mist has Defender. And he's actually stabilized the board. We've said it a few times, very precarious since he's only at 8 and LRR has access to at least 6 points of burn. But for now, he's alive and fighting.
You saw Philip say combat there. And that was going to be my question is, what am I getting in with here? I'm so scared.
He's got to be careful, though, because Sonic Assault is an instant. So at the end of the turn, Nevins can tap the Legion Guildmage, and that will free up the 2 bodyguards to attack. So if Nevins hasn't picked up an instant to cast, he might be done for here.
There's that Sonic Assault, and Nevins did know about it. All right, what has he got?
He's just going to spend 6 and deal 3 damage, which is a good play. You want to use your creature in response, but I think it's going to leave him vulnerable if LRR decides to go for the win.
All right, so LR knocked down to 9 there on that activation. Philip Nevins at 6. Yep, and here we see tap that down, deal the damage to you, and there is a handshake. LR takes the match here, 2 games to 0 over Philip Nevins. Some pretty cool Is It stuff there, Reed.
Yeah, nice showing from that deck. I liked how his deck has a little bit of everything. He's got stuff like Wall of Mist and Wishcoin Crab to brick wall the ground and make sure he can survive to do all his cool stuff in the late game. But then he's got card advantage in the form of stuff like Invent. He's got aggression with the Leapfrogs, and the bigger flyers, and then Sonic
Invert,
Assault
invent.
can just kill the opponent out of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff to get from his deck, too. All right, well, more action from Guilds of Ravnica coming up in just a few minutes after this.